Good morning, everyone. I'm back to answer a few asks today, and I will try to get more of them done as the week goes on. We're just going to jump right in. Do you think it's possible that all of the unaired footage post-coda will eventually be shown to us? I mean, it'll be a big waste of everyone's time and the money spent on the actors' makeup, setting, etc. if it's never going to see the light of day. Yeah, I mean, that's the whole point, is we do think it will be shown. And, of course, it's a thing that, possibility that they could decide not to show it, but if they did that, they would give us the footage. So what I mean is, if they had, there was always the argument that it was just a deleted scene that they ended up cutting out of the narrative. And we've debunked that in a lot of ways. I mean, it was a huge production, and there's no way they would have gone to all that trouble just to cut it out. If you think about the scenes that are actually deleted scenes in The Walking Dead, they're generally not entire scenes or entire sequences. They're just little, shaving off this, that, or the other, a little conversation here or a tiny scene there, but it's not an entire sequence that was filmed as an arc, right? They don't do that. But the other thing is that all the deleted scenes that there are, generally they get put on DVDs as DVD extras, or someone will post them somewhere. And that definitely hasn't happened, which suggests that this is going to be shown and it's being kept back, in order to show it to us at some future point. If it weren't, they would have shown it to us by now. There's also the thing about the guy who owned the property had taken some pictures. They allowed him to be there and to take some pictures on set, but he was told that he couldn't post his pictures until after the footage aired. And he hasn't posted any pictures that anybody has seen. The footage has not aired. You know what I mean? It's just obvious that they are waiting and still plan to show it to us at some point. So that's why we really fixate on that footage and those deleted scenes, because that's probably the biggest proof we have that Beth's going to return, or at the very least that she's going to become part of the narrative and they will show us what they filmed there. Because the other thing you could possibly argue is that even if it were just a flashback that they're going to use at some point and it's not about her being alive or coming back, if that's the case, why haven't they done it yet? It's been 10 years. They could have used that as a flashback at any point and they still haven't. So that's super, super suspicious. And it just, to me, proves that they're still hanging on to that with the intent of using it at some point. And I can't imagine what else they would be using it for except if she returns, because otherwise I think we would have seen it by now. So the answer to your question is yes, I definitely think it's possible. I think it's more than possible. I think it's definitely what they're planning to do. All right, next one. Why was Daryl staring at Isabel so much in that last Daryl Dixon episode? They were making it very obvious that's what he was doing. Why do you think they did that? P.S. I don't think he has feelings for her, but I don't get the point otherwise. I think it just goes back to the fact that he's lonely and he's really very actively searching for companionship. They really brought that out several times in the first season, that he was sad that he didn't have anyone waiting for him, like Falou said, or, he was observing a lot of couples, and he just clearly really wants that. So I think that's why he was looking at her. It's just he's got it on the brain, right? It's on his mind. And it doesn't have specifically to do with her. I don't think it's just about he's really lonely and looking for companionship. And she doesn't seem to be interested in him that way. And then there's the fact that, I will harp on this till I die, she was not keeping him there. He was still going to take off at the end in France. And the only reason he probably didn't is because Laurent came to get him, and he's not going to abandon Laurent on the beach with all these walkers around, right? But, I mean, contrast that to still when he was willing to settle down with Beth and stop looking for Rick, which Rick is like his North Star. Daryl always looks for him and goes to him, and he was willing to give that up and stay with Beth in that house. And that's just very obviously different than, Isabel was begging him to stay, not necessarily because she had romantic feelings for him or anything, but she was begging him to stay, and he could not be bothered to stay for her. He was leaving, and that's a big tell. So, yeah, I just think it has to do with they're really laying it on pretty thick and pretty heavy that he is looking for companionship. And remember that they always said that Judith's line about how he deserves happiness too was going to be a big part of the Daryl Dixon spinoff. We heard that at the very beginning, like voiceover of Judith saying that again just before he was washed ashore in France. So it's almost like the whole theme, the whole point of the Daryl Dixon spinoff is for him to find his true love. And there's going to be a lot happening along the way, but let's just put it this way. Even if by some crazy twist we actually are wrong about Beth coming back, the Daryl Dixon spinoff, no matter how many seasons it is, and I think they've greenlighted the 3rd season now, is going to be about him finding his soulmate. So whoever that is, we're going to know by the end of the spinoff. And yes, I 100% think it's going to be Beth. It's really, really obvious to me based on all the symbolism and everything. But even if, like I say, by some crazy twist we're wrong about that, at least we'll know it by the end of the spinoff. But I'm not worried that it's anybody else. I still think it's going to be her. So there's just way too much evidence, way too much symbolism pointing to it. And as I said, with that last ask, there's still that missing footage from the 17 days that we haven't seen. I mean, what would be the point of showing us that footage and having it be somebody else? Like, that just wouldn't make sense at all. It wouldn't be continuous, and Gimple's just a better storyteller than that. So I hope that answers your question. How many people do you think are in the Team Delusional? Because on Tumblr it feels like we are 20, lol, but I sometimes see people talking about it on other social media when there's a post about Beth or Coda, and it really feels like we are just a few people, honestly. I mean, the big answer is I have no idea how many of us there actually are. There's really no way to quantify that. I do think that there are plenty of people who know about us and who were once part of Team Delusional, but over the years they've kind of lost faith in it. There are also people who might not entirely believe that she's coming back, but they have read our theories and they think we have a point. You know, I can't tell you how many times over the years I've seen someone go, okay, that's a good point. That's weird, you know, but they can't bring themselves entirely to believe that she'll be back. And of course, every year that passes and she doesn't show up just kind of cements that belief for them that we're wrong about her coming back. But we do have a good point about the symbolism and about a lot of the weirdness around Coda and things like that. And that's why so many people chalk it up to bad writing and just say Gimple's a bad writer, a bad storyteller, because they think that it's just discontinuities in the narrative, but it's not. It's something he's specifically setting up for the future. So I get why they think that, but it's just, anyway. So my point is that I think that there are a lot of people who know about our theories, at least online, and a lot of people who talk about them and who consider them, but they're not necessarily like card-carrying, believing members of TD. I can also tell you that back in the day after Coda, I mean, remember that there were like, like 60,000 people who signed the petition for her to come back. Now, not all of those are necessarily TDers, but there's a lot of people who would love it if she did come back. So they might not believe she's going to come back, but once she does, they will just jump right on the bandwagon. And then there are people who may have read a lot of our theories and gone, nah, I don't think they're right. I don't think she's coming back, but it is an interesting theory. But then when she shows up, they will remember that theory and they'll be like, oh, they were right. You know what I mean? So that's why you hear other people talking about it. They're not necessarily believers in her return, but they do know about the theories. And I think TD has really shined a light on different aspects of the symbolism and kind of what they do, because there's been a lot of things we've been right about. And it kind of makes me laugh that people will be like, okay, so you're right about everything else, but I still don't think you're right about Beth. Like, okay, but if we were right about everything else, guys, come on, let's be logical here. Anyway, so I don't know how many there are, but I think there are, I guess what I'm trying to say is that I think that there are a lot of people who know about us, have considered our theories, and maybe talk about them, even if they won't like actually come right out and say that they are TD believers. In terms of people who actually talk about it and actually post about it, yeah, I think we're relatively few. I think it's only a handful that are still here and still posting about it, but we collectively have plenty of followers and get plenty of reads or watches on our stuff. What I started to say, too, is that back in the day when TD was new and it was not very long after Coda, there were like thousands of people paying attention. Like even on Tumblr, if somebody made some sort of Beth Returns GIF, I mean, it would get thousands of reblogs. So of course that's gone down, and that's not really the case anymore and hasn't been for years. But the point is that there's a lot of people who want her to come back, but just kind of lost faith. So we probably have more reach than it seems like we do, but in terms of like active members that are posting about it, yeah, it is relatively few at this point. But that doesn't mean that we don't have a far reach or that plenty of people over the years haven't taken notice of us. So, sorry, that was kind of a long, sprawling answer. Next one. I remember reading a post of Beth's shooter that either you or Beth Green is Hope Unseen had posted years ago. For the longest time, I've always believed that Dawn was Beth's shooter until I went back to that episode and watched more carefully and saw that Dawn couldn't had enough time to grab her gun right as Beth stabbed her. Can you elaborate on this further? Who do you think is the true identity of Beth's shooter? So a couple of things here. Everybody always talks about how the gun was too low and the angle, she wouldn't have been able to, even if the gun had accidentally gone off, the angle or trajectory of the bullet would have been upward and would have gone like straight through underneath Beth's jaw. It certainly wouldn't have hit her high on the forehead. But for me, you even have to take a step back from that, because the reason people are saying that is because after Beth is shot, we see Dawn holding her gun down by her waist, pointed upward. So, of course, that's where they're getting that. And that's true. But if you really look at it right before Beth stabs her, her gun is not even out of her holster before Beth stabs her. It's like when Beth stabs her, she takes it out. And that's like a normal sort of an ingrained response for a cop. They can get their guns out pretty quickly when they feel a threat. But before that, she wasn't feeling threatened by Beth. So her hand was kind of on her gun, but her gun was still in her holster when Beth shot her. There's no way that at the moment Beth stabbed her, I said shot, didn't I? I meant stabbed. That she could have been shot by, it was still in its holster. So, anyway, yeah, definitely does not make any sense. So, in terms of who the identity of Beth's shooter is, the big answer is we don't know for sure. And I know you're asking my opinion. I don't have one that I'm completely set on. So a couple of different things that I will say. I think that there is a small possibility that it could still be Dawn, and hear me out on this. I don't think, this is not like my number one theory or anything, but it's possible that they actually cut a whole several seconds out of that scene that we didn't see. So if for whatever reason Dawn actually took her gun out of her holster after Beth stabbed her, and then the shot actually came 2 or 3 seconds later and Dawn had her gun out by then, and I'm just saying like maybe they skipped over several seconds, like completely cut it out so we didn't see it, then it's possible that Dawn somehow could have been. We still have the angle problem though. And overall, I don't really think that's what it is, but it's something that I've considered. And if that's the case, then clearly they're hiding something because they're cutting out full, 5 seconds somewhere of something that happened that they aren't showing us. And there's got to be a reason for that. But I think it's more likely that the shooter did come the shot did come from somewhere else and someone we couldn't see. So originally, I remember that a lot of the TD theories were that it was someone behind Beth, that it was Dr. Edwards or one of the Grady cops or one of the wards who were in the rooms and kind of looking out into the hallway. But I don't think that, honestly, that any of those people could have done it without Rick and Daryl noticing. And people just said they were in shock, they had tunnel vision, they didn't understand what just happened. There'd been a lot going on in season 5, so they had already lost people, and like Bob, and were all kind of in shock and having PTSD and didn't know what was going on. And I think that's all true, but even so, I just can't imagine someone pulling out a gun, raising it up high enough to make that shot and nobody noticing, because they were all facing that way. So I think it's somebody that we actually don't know and didn't see. And that's kind of frustrating because it could be anybody. But my biggest evidence for why I think this has to do with Rick. In 905, just before he disappeared with Jadis into the CRM, one of his hallucinations or dreams was being in a car with Shane again, right? And they were talking about the third man and how the third man made all the difference in what happened. And, of course, they were talking about when Rick got shot at the beginning of the series, just before the apocalypse happened. They were chasing their suspects. The suspect's car rolled. Incidentally, the license plate on that car was the same one we saw around Beth and Coda, so that's really, really telling. But they thought that there were only 2 suspects. 2 men jumped out and started shooting at them, and they didn't know there was an unseen third man, and that's the reason that Rick was shot and almost died. So I feel like they're using that template for Beth, and there is some sort of unseen third person who shot her from a distance. I don't know where the shot came from. I think the gun would have had to be completely concealed, like maybe, I don't know, maybe some sort of like Jason Bourne lipstick cam hole in the wall that they put the barrel of the gun through or something like that. I mean, I don't know. Obviously, we don't know. But I think the shot came from an unseen third person that no one in the group, in Team Family, knew anything about. And so they just assumed it had to have come from Dawn. And, you know, everything is still true about them having tunnel vision and not thinking very clearly about it because they made an assumption and it was incorrect. But even so, I don't think it was anyone that we saw in the hallway that shot her. There was so much mystery and, intrigue going on at Grady. So many things that were unexplained that we just didn't see. Even in terms of the ward system and what was actually going on there and who they were actually talking to. And all of that is still to this day unexplained. And I've told the story before, but when I was watching it, I watched Slabtown and I had so many questions and I was going, ugh, this is annoying. Why aren't they explaining this? And I just assumed that when the rest of the group, Rick and Daryl and everybody got there, they would explain it then. You know, they would like have a conversation and Beth would tell them what was happening. And of course it didn't work out that way. But to this day, they've never explained it. It's really, really vague. And, you know, we have to kind of draw conclusions based on what they do tell us. But that's exactly why we read so much into it, because they don't tell us much, and everything that they do put in there is really, really significant, and there's a reason. They put every single line of dialogue, every single symbol, every single background image, every single scene is very, very strategic to give us some idea of what's going on without actually disclosing the full extent of what was going on. So anyway, I'll stop rambling now, but I guess the answer is I don't know who it is, but I think it's somebody that we are currently unaware of. I mean, I can't even think of anybody that we saw there that you could say, oh, it was this person. You know, I don't know. Maybe Percy or something, but there's no reason that it would be him. But my point is that it's not like some side character that we know that we would never have suspected or something. I think it's somebody that we did not see at all, because that's the point of the Rick template, is it's an unseen third man that nobody knew anything about. So anyway, that's my theory, but of course we'll have to wait until they actually tell us what's going on there. All right, I will quit there for today. I've been a little bit behind this week on getting these out, but I will try to get out at least one more, if not 2, before the end of the week. Everyone have a fantastic day.